There are some foods so bizarre, we're not sure that you need to try them in order to get your certified culinary adventure card. On the other hand, there are the strange dishes that might surprise you with their delectable flavor. Here's what you need to try. If you've ever eaten a mushroom, you've eaten fungus before. But unless you live in Mexico, you may never have tasted Huitlacoche, a corn fungus that's been used in dishes of the indigenous people of central Mexico and the southwestern US for centuries. Huitlacoche goes by several other nicknames, including corn smut and Mexican truffle. It has an earthy, corn-like taste, is high in protein, and is easy to cook with. You may be able to find Huitlacoche on the menu of your favorite Mexican restaurant or taqueria, and you might even be able to find it at farmers markets if you live in the Southwest. Add it to quesadillas, sauces, stews, and more. Not only will it add a cool color, it turns black when it's cooked, but it'll also add a unique flavor to all your favorite Mexican foods. Salty, tangy pickles are usually a greenish-yellow color, but in the Mississippi Delta region, you might find them dyed bright purple, red, or blue. That's because these pickles have been removed from their first brine of vinegar and salt and placed in a container of sweet Kool-Aid, where they sit for a week. The brightly colored pickles take on some of that sweet flavor, but not so much that the vinegar and salt are completely lost. Instead, you get a crunchy snack that bursts with all three tastes at once. It sounds strange, but think of it as a modern version of the bread and butter pickle with a little extra color added for fun.
Oh, yeah!
Whoa! He just burst through the wall!
Who's thirsty for some Kool-Aid?
I am! Yeah!
Eating meat-stuffed meat isn't a new phenomenon, but the turducken, that indulgent Thanksgiving meat treat, has only been around since the middle of the 20th century. The most recent entry in a long history of ingastration, or cooking one animal inside of another, the turducken is made by stuffing a partially deboned turkey with a deboned duck. The duck is itself stuffed with a deboned chicken, which is stuffed with perfectly ordinary bread-based stuffing. Though Cajun chef Paul Prudhomme claimed to be the turducken inventor, and even held a trademark for its name, some theorize that it was actually invented in a hunting camp, and there's even a surgeon who claims to be the true innovator. Whoever invented it, it's undeniably fun. If you find yourself bored with the standard turkey next Thanksgiving, try a turducken, which offers a taste of 3 different meats in one. Lemons, vinegar, pickles, rhubarb, they're all tart-tasting foods, unless you decide to taste trip before eating them. Taste tripping is one term for eating a fruit called a miracle berry, or a tablet made with the substance miraculin, before eating sour and bitter foods.
It does something extraordinary to your tongue, and that's what you're going to discover. So keep sucking, keep sucking.
I must remember this speech.
Miraculin, a substance extracted from the miracle berry, attaches itself to the sour and bitter taste receptors on your tongue, blocking them and making even the tartest foods taste sweet, all without adding any extra sugar. Originally, Miraculin was being explored as an ingredient to make no-sugar and low-sugar foods, but the aspartame lobby managed to get the FDA to label it as a food additive rather than a food, meaning it had to undergo years of testing. These days, you can buy Miraculin tablets online to experiment with taste tripping, and you might eventually see it as an ingredient used to make sweet-tasting foods that don't actually contain sugar. Some of the most beloved regional dishes around the world are those born from scarcity. Kentucky's Burgoo is just one example. Burgoo is a soupy stew made from meat and vegetables, and that sounds perfectly normal. However, it's the type of meat in Burgoo that's a bit unconventional. Burgoo can be made with pretty much any meat one can get their hands on. It's been made with roadkill, as well as wild game found in the forests of Kentucky, like squirrel, rabbit, possum, pheasant, and venison. These days, it's more likely made with chicken and pork, but as long as yours has a mix of meats, along with some kind of tomato, beans, corn, and potatoes, it's legit. If your garden is plagued by snails, then trying escargot might be the last thing on your culinary to-do list. But this French delicacy is more than it seems at first. French escargot isn't made from the same types of snails you'll find in your garden. They're made with a type of land snail that is safe for consumption, and the snails are usually prepared with loads of garlic butter and fresh parsley. It turns out pretty much anything, including snails, is great if you put enough butter and garlic on it. Rattlesnake may seem more like a wild predator than a source of food, but in the Southwest it's known for its light flavor, which some liken to chicken or white fish. It can be breaded and fried or served in chili or stew. If you aren't trying rattlesnake at a restaurant, take care when preparing it. You need to decapitate the snake, and even then, the head can still bite you, so take care. The end result has little meat and not too much flavor, but hey, you can say you've eaten rattlesnake. Life comes with some basic truths. French fries should be crispy, gravy is served with meat, and cheese curds are turned into cheese. All of these food certainties are turned on their head in poutine, a classic French-Canadian dish of French fries that are covered with fresh cheese curds and hot gravy. The fries soak up the gravy, while the gravy melts the cheese curds, leaving you with a dish of salty, savory, starchy goodness. It sounds a little weird, but it's one of the world's great bar snacks. Poutine was supposedly invented in Quebec, at the same time as disco fries. French fries with mozzarella cheese and gravy were invented in New Jersey.
And now we wait.
Cheese lovers may pride themselves on enjoying cheeses that are extra drippy or even extra stinky, but nothing can beat the unique qualities of Casu marzu, also known as maggot cheese. Hailing from Sardinia in Italy, Casu marzu is a sheep's milk cheese that's infested with live maggots. They eat and digest the cheese, all the while excreting an acid that turns the hard curd into something creamy and spreadable. Because of the health risks, Casu marzu isn't sold in stores in Sardinia and is technically banned, but people still produce it on a small scale, so if you want to try it, find a local guide who can hook you up. Octopus sushi ranges in quality. Sometimes it's rubbery and chewy, other times it's tender and buttery. But if you really want to have a transcendent octopus sushi experience, you need to head to Korea, where you can try sanokji. Sanokji is wriggling octopus, and it's pretty much the freshest octopus you can eat. A chef takes a live young octopus, cuts it into pieces, and serves it while it's still wriggling. Some people even pop the whole live octopus into their mouth at once, but if it's your first time, maybe start slow with just a wriggling piece or two. Oh, and don't forget to chew. About 6 people die each year from choking on this delicacy. When you hear pudding, do you think of dessert? If so, you might be sorely disappointed when ordering a plate of black pudding. Black pudding isn't a dessert at all. It's actually a type of blood sausage and a popular breakfast food in the UK and Ireland. Pig's blood is mixed with pork fat and oatmeal, then turned into a sausage that's served up with breakfast, usually boiled, fried, or grilled. Though black pudding is calorie-dense, it also packs in plenty of protein and iron, giving you the energy you need to start your day, if you can get past the idea of eating blood. Speaking of names that don't really match what's on the plate, is there any dish with a name more misleading than Sweetbreads? Neither sweet nor a bread, Sweetbreads are actually another name for the thymus gland or pancreas of an animal, usually veal or lamb. Sweetbreads are said to have a smooth, creamy texture when cooked properly, and they're often fried, so the exterior provides a crispy contrast. You do have to soak, blanch, and shock the sweetbreads before you cook them, so it can be a bit of a project to make them at home. But if you're an adventurous eater who wants to add more offal to your life, they're worth seeking out. Rocky Mountain oysters are another misleadingly named delicacy. This popular appetizer of the American West is actually made from bull testicles, but calling them that somehow isn't quite so catchy. Rocky Mountain oysters were apparently an invention of cattle ranchers who used every part of the animal for food, and often found themselves with an abundance of bull testicles after castrating their herds. Waste not, want not, as they say. These days, you can find Rocky Mountain oysters made with the testicles of lamb, beef, and bison. They're usually deep-fried until crispy and served with cocktail sauce for dipping.
Stand back, everybody. The record falls tonight.
Look at him go.
Breakfast meat of all kinds can be a little suspect. What exactly is in that sausage? But nothing beats the mystery of Scrapple. This delicacy is usually found in diner-type establishments in the mid-Atlantic states, including Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland, though in other states you may be able to find it under other names, like the unappetizing liver mush. It's made with the broth resulting from butchering and cooking a whole hog. The broth and offal are then mixed with buckwheat, cornmeal, and spices, simmered until thick, then chilled until it coagulates into a sliceable loaf. The scrapple is then sliced and fried, so it has a crispy exterior and a mushy, soft interior. Serve it with eggs and condiments like ketchup, jelly, and applesauce. While Japanese foods like sushi, ramen, and teriyaki can be found almost everywhere in the US these days, there are still plenty of unique Japanese specialties that food lovers should explore. Case in point, natto. Natto is a traditional Japanese food that's made by fermenting soybeans. It's a traditional breakfast dish, and because of its high protein, fiber, and vitamin K content, it's considered a health food. Like many fermented foods, natto has a distinct smell, but what really might throw you is the texture, which is sticky, stringy, and a bit slimy. Sounds questionable? Try eating natto with rice, then mix in some Japanese mustard and a seasoning sauce of some kind if it's your first time trying it. Tofu can be a polarizing ingredient even in a most basic form. It's been enjoyed in China for 2,000 years and was introduced to Japan in the 8th century. But sometimes people in the West still turn up their nose at tofu. Some theorize that this is due to mass-produced tofu's mild flavor. But if you think tofu is bland, you probably haven't tried stinky tofu yet. Stinky tofu lives up to its name, with some saying it smells of spoiled cheese and rotting garbage. But once you get past the smell, it's prized for its flavor. Stinky tofu is usually fermented for between several days up to several months in a brine made from fermented milk, vegetables, meat, fish, or a combination of these ingredients. When it's done marinating and fermenting in the brine, it's usually deep-fried and served with pungent condiments like chili sauce, soy sauce, and pickles. Try this dish and you'll never think of tofu as boring again. If you're a fan of expensive and exotic coffees, maybe you've heard of Kopi Luwak, also known as Civet coffee. Some say it's the best coffee in the world, and it's certainly expensive, but what exactly is it?
Cat owners everywhere, stop fighting the litter box battle.
It's a coffee that's harvested like no other. Civet cats actually eat coffee cherries, then, well, poop them out. The coffee beans are then taken from the scat, washed, roasted, ground, and brewed to make a coffee that's not only expensive, but also apparently pretty tasty. That's thanks to the fact that civet cats only eat the ripest coffee cherries, and because their digestive enzymes work on the coffee beans to eventually produce a smoother brew. Unfortunately, there is some worry about how humane the process of making civet coffee is. While the more expensive civet coffee is made using coffee beans taken from the poop of wild civets, the slightly cheaper stuff is made from civets that are held in captivity and forced to eat coffee cherries. If you want to try civet coffee, look for shops or sellers that use the kind produced by wild civets. It may cost extra, but it's worth it to know that the animals aren't being mistreated. The average resident of the United States eats almost 300 eggs a year. But since those eggs aren't fertilized, your chances of cracking open a shell to see a little chicken fetus inside are pretty minimal, unless you have your own coop or get your eggs from a local farmer. In the Philippines, however, they like their duck eggs to be fertilized. That's the only way that they can enjoy balut. Balut is a hard-boiled duck egg that contains a partially formed duck embryo. Once cooked, it apparently has a great flavor and many unique textures to enjoy, from the clear broth within the shell to the creamy yolk. And yes, it sometimes does contain eyes, feathers, and beaks. Balut is often served with salt or vinegar as a seasoning and is a popular street food. In the US, guinea pigs are usually seen as pets, often the star of a kindergarten classroom or the pride and joy of a youngster who wants to someday upgrade to a puppy. But in Peru, guinea pig is a farmed animal that's prized for its meat. The meat is usually prepared by removing the hair and intestines, then roasting or frying it whole. It's said to taste a bit like a gamier chicken, though some say that it has the texture and flavor of suckling pig, another delicacy. The skin gets crispy and meat stays tender. You don't have to travel to Peru to try this regional delicacy. You might be able to find it at Andean, Peruvian, or Ecuadorian restaurants in New York, Los Angeles, and Miami. Haggis is one of those foods whose reputation precedes it. This traditional Scottish dish is made by stuffing a sheep's stomach with a blend of offal, like heart, liver, and lungs, that has been mixed with animal fat, oatmeal, spices, and onions, then cooked. Haggis is usually made with sheep stomach, but it can also be made with the offal from almost any mammal. It may sound strange, but the flavor is apparently hearty, with a crumbly sausage texture and a warm pepper flavor from all of the spices. If you don't want to eat it on its own, you can try it in stuffing or fried and served with breakfast. Eating fermented foods can present a challenge to palates that are unfamiliar with those funky flavors, but Iceland's Hákarl takes things to the next level. This traditional delicacy is made by fermenting the meat of the Greenland shark. The meat of this particular shark is generally toxic, but a unique process invented by the Vikings turns it into something that's technically edible. The shark carcass is buried underground for several months where it rots and ferments. Then, the meat is removed from the carcass and hung to dry for several more months, after which it's ready to eat. The resulting meat has a robust odor, apparently like rotten cheese and ammonia, but each bite is a taste of history. Louisiana might be known for its gumbo and jambalaya, but if you haven't tried the Cajun classic Chaudin, you're missing out on a part of their culinary tradition. Chaudin, also called smoked ponce, has its roots in French Acadian cuisine. Cooks take a pig's stomach and stuff it with a combination of pork, herbs, and spices. It's usually then smoked, though both the smoked and unsmoked meat can be roasted or braised before being served as the main dish. Slice it and serve it over rice for an authentic taste of Cajun cuisine. If you've ever heard of head cheese and thought that it was some sort of dairy product you're missing out on, think again. Head cheese isn't cheese at all. It's actually made from boiling a pig's head in a pot with a bunch of aromatics, picking off all the meat, and then stuffing the meat into sausage casings or a loaf pan. The resulting naturally collagen and gelatin-rich broth sets as the meat cools, so you're left with a sliceable meat product. It's full of different textures thanks to the inclusion of so many different pig head parts. To serve, head cheese is usually sliced and served with breads or crackers, butter, pickles, and mustard. It often seems that in harsh climates, you find some of the world's most unique foods, dishes that are born out of a desire to make every bite count. Such is the case with jellied moose nose, an Alaskan and Canadian specialty that's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. To make jellied moose nose, the fur on the nose is removed. Then the nose is sliced and simmered with aromatics like onions, garlic, and spices. When it's done cooking, the meat is placed in a loaf pan and covered in moose broth, then chilled until it turns into a sliceable jelly loaf, not unlike head cheese. A food with a cute name like chitlins has gotta be good, right? Well, chitlins, also known as chitterlings, are definitely coveted by some, but to enjoy them, you have to get past the fact that what you're eating is pig intestine. Popular in the American South, chitlins are a labor of love. The intestines have to be cleaned, otherwise they smell, then boiled until tender. After, they're usually fried up and served with vinegar and hot sauce to help cut any unique offal flavors that the food has. They may be called chitlins in the American South, but intestines are enjoyed around the world, so don't knock them until you try them. Add to the list of meats that supposedly taste like chicken, frog's legs. Frog's legs are a food that was traditionally popular in France, and they're considered good eats in Louisiana and other parts of the American South too. The legs are the only parts of the frog that are edible, and with all the hopping around they do, the legs carry quite a bit of meat. Frog's legs are usually served breaded and fried. The meat is tender like chicken, and the flavor is mild, though it can have a muddy, swampy flavor like freshwater fish. One thing to keep in mind if you want to try this amphibious delicacy, many species of frogs are endangered, while others can carry diseases and fungi. It might be best to make this treat an infrequent indulgence.
We only eat the leg. It's a delicacy, tastes a little bit like chicken.
Have you got any chicken?
There are some bizarre foods you can try cooking for yourself at home, but fugu, also known as blowfish, isn't one of them. That's because much of the blowfish is poisonous, including its reproductive organs, liver, and intestines, which contain a toxin that's more deadly than cyanide. Blowfish needs to be prepared carefully by a professional, and becoming a pro isn't easy. In fact, in the past 20 years, 23 people in Japan have died after trying to prepare and eat fugu on their own. So why try fugu? For some, it's all about the potential danger. It's also apparently prized for its texture, while its taste is apparently similar to that barometer of all flavor, the humble chicken. You may already know that caviar, or fish roe, is a delicacy, and there's a good chance you've even tried it. But what about ant caviar? Also called escamoles, ant caviar is a treat made from ant larvae. It was once a delicacy among the Aztecs, and these days, you can still find it on the menu of restaurants all around central Mexico, even in the modern metropolis of Mexico City. Escamoles are prized for their flavor, which is often described as nutty and buttery, and their creamy mouthfeel. If you want to try escamoles, you will need to travel to Mexico, as the ant caviar isn't allowed to cross the country's borders. Nothing motivates a vacation like a craving for some tasty ant eggs. To an arachnophobe, this next one might sound too weird to be true, but it turns out that in Cambodia, fried tarantulas aren't just a popular snack, they're also a food that helped people avoid starvation during war. Tarantulas have been eaten in the region for more than 100 years, but when Pol Pot and the Khmer Rouge took over the country in 1975 and threw it into war, people started relying on the spiders as an important source of nutrition during a time of scarcity. These days, fried tarantulas are a popular street snack. First, they're cleaned and seasoned with salt and herbs, then fried. After being fried, they're sometimes rolled in sugar or garlic for extra flavor. And if you're eager to try, you can get tarantulas for just 10 to 20 cents each. The incredible edible egg is as prized for its high protein content and ease of cooking as it is for its versatility. The next time you're tired of scrambled or fried eggs, try a century egg instead. These eggs, which are popular in China, are made from hard-boiled chicken, duck, or quail eggs, which are preserved and cured in a mixture of salt and clay, which sometimes also contains ash, rice hulls, and lime. The eggs are usually left to cure for about 100 days. When they're ready, the egg whites emerge dark and gelatinous, while the yolk becomes creamy. The odor is strong, but the flavor is sharp and earthy. It's not that uncommon to cook with rendered bacon fat or lard, but in Ukraine, pork fat is served as a dish in its own right. Called salo, the pork fat is served cold, along with tangy accompaniments like garlic, onions, and pickles, often atop a slice of bread and chased with a shot of vodka. Salo is usually cured with salt or fermented in a salty brine. It can also be smoked. The salo is taken from the fat on the back of the pig. This calorie-rich part of the animal was an important source of nutrition for those braving Ukraine's harsh winters. But these days, it's more of a beloved traditional food than a necessity. Take one look at a lamprey and you might wonder how on earth anyone ever decided that it would make for a good meal, but it's been popular since the Middle Ages. Lampreys are sea creatures that have barely evolved over the past few million years, and they look sort of like eels that have a jawless, gaping mouth of teeth where the face should be. Yummy? Apparently so. Lampreys are said to have a meaty texture, almost like that of slow-cooked beef. And unlike many of their oceanic counterparts, lampreys don't really taste like fish. Apparently, that was one of the reasons for its popularity in antiquity. People abstaining from meat during religious fasts would opt for lamprey over other seafood because of its meaty texture and flavor. Try a taste of this ancient fish, and you'll be able to get an idea of what your ancestors were eating when they dined hundreds or even thousands of years ago. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more mashed videos about the world's strangest foods are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.